Thank you, viewers. Sitting in front of a very noble Ghanaian family that have their roots in politics and social and public life. It is a family that is well known by their name and by their deeds, of course, good deeds. And for the next 1 hour or so, I, Napoleon Atukito, will stand in the name of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation interacting with the Ahwoi siblings. And I think that rings a bell. I have Honorable Ahwoi, a former Minister of State, in front of me. I have Honorable Ahwoi, also a former Minister of State, sitting in front of me. Of course, the siblings have lined up in front of me. I have Professor Kwame Ahwoi also here, and their sisters, whom many know little about. They are Amachum, Amaduma Batel Kujo, Ifwa Abraham Labi, Agnes Apia J. Danka. The last one is an Edujemfi because he came from a different father. Welcome to Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Our networks are GBC News and GTV Main. And this interview will also find expression on other networks that GBC operates. You are welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll start with Mr. Ahwoi, who is the eldest of the siblings. My place here is occasioned by a book that has been severally authored by the Ahwoi siblings, documenting their memoirs from life, from childhood till date. In fact, when you go through the book, you realize that it's a book that is very much up to date, as it takes account of some of the latest events that have occurred in their lives up to even 2022 or 2021. Well, Uncle Ato, you are the elder of the siblings, and you were born to your parents as the very firstborn. Interestingly, you have named the book as The Children of House Number D13, South Centreso in Kumasi. In fact, if you look at the career of your father, for instance, he was transferred to several towns. So maybe, I don't know whether you would like to answer this one, but I want to know why, upon all the places that you have traversed, if you are paying Central Region, Northern, etc., you decided to pin on Centreso in Kumasi and name the book, after your residence in Kumasi. Why?
Thank you very much. The reason is very simple. Our father taught in Winneba before I was born. Then he was transferred as a teacher to Enche. At that time, I think I was the only one around. Then he was transferred to Zuarungu in now Upper East, where me and Kwesi and Amma were around. Then he was transferred to Sifibi also, where at that time, I think all of us, except Akosu also, were born in Efua. Then he was transferred to Kumasi, and it was in Kumasi that he died. And then our mother got married to Mr. Edujemfi, who's also deceased now, and had 2 children. Nanaya, who's also gone, and then Agnes Apia Danka. So all of us sitting here, including the one who even died, all stayed in the house number D13, South Centreso. So that's why we named the book after D13, South Centreso, because we were all living in that 2 tiny bedroom house in South Centreso. And our father rented house number D13 at South Centreso. Then when he died, our mother bought it. So that was the first property that we acquired.
Oh,
So there's some nostalgia around it.
Okay.
So that's why we named it after South Central.
Now let's move to how you were able to vividly name all your neighbors in the book. You were able to recount it so crystal clear, and that was another high point that I noticed about the book.
Since we all grew up in South Central, we all had our classmates, our friends, our lovers and all in South Central. They knew us and we knew them. And in growing up, we remembered everybody that lived in the area. The business people, the academics, just name every profession we had in South Central. Because South Central had become a model estate that Kwame Nkrumah has set up. It had a semi-detached house and sometimes detached house. And we thought that to put this whole story in perspective, we should not forget those that we grew up with. And that's where you find all those personalities and businesses that they ran and role that they played captured in the first part of the book.
Okay.
Is to set the book in setting. South Central, house number D13, Kumasi.
Okay.
And I will add on to it that because we were helping our mother by selling, we were moving in the whole area, the whole of South Central. So we got to know every house and the people in those houses. There were some children in South Central who didn't know the area very well because they weren't moving out.
Okay.
But we were going around hawking, so we knew every house and the people in those houses.
I see.
Unlike today, South Central and North Central were laid out in such a way that if you say D is D line. We had A, B, C, D like that. So it was very easy to locate where everybody is. So you have a friend in J line, you know the name, you know the next person who lived next to that person like that. So that was how we used to recognize, the people and their homes and everything.
We were all hawking, as my sister said, helping our mother when our daddies died, helping our mother to make a living and therefore take care of us. So we hawked in the whole of South Central. And when we say hawking, it's like what you call in today's parlance the street hawkers. We have been street hawkers. Those guys selling in the street, we did the same thing. At that time, as my brother would tell you, it wasn't child labor. It was child support for parentage.
Child support for parentage.
For parentage.
Take care of us.
All of it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We sold a Mori condo. Me sitting here today was hawking condo. And all of us did the same. Not only condo, but condo stands out because we had to shout and sing around it to attract our buyers. So, Kwamna, how did we sing the condo?
Well, let him do the condo. I'll do the crazy.
The whole of South Central knows us as Emore Fuono. Emore Waha. Emore is used for cocoa, for cake, for anything. Then we sold kerosene. Kwamna, how did we hawk kerosene?
Crazy waha kotwa te kunidamo. Means there's kerosene here. A bottle, it was sold in beer bottles. A bottle is going for 8 pence. Tekuni dama, teku was 6 pence. Dama was 12 pence. That's 2 pesos. So 6 plus 2 gives you 8 pence. So a bottle was 8 pence. So you were shouting the way you were hawking, and you were also giving the price at the same time.
Myself, him, took both road fried by our mom to Prempeh College. Prempeh College had houses, and every house had a canteen. our mother had gotten a contract to supply Prempeh College, those houses, with buffalo. So our job every morning was to carry the buffalo to Prempeh College, come back home before we go to our school.
I see.
And we did that all the way, and he was later, when he became elder in Prempeh College, Form 3, he became a canteen keeper. So he was receiving our supplies and distributing among his colleagues. Not only buffalo, Mom also sold underwear, drawers, and we'll have to go and sell at Bekwai Runabout in Kumasi. So we'll go there and sell. If you read this book, it tells you the beginnings of life of these people that you are interviewing today.
Yes.
And therefore, when we meet those guys in the street, we have a different attitude towards how they should be handled. Right?
Yes.
We have a totally different attitude because we've been there before. And through what they are doing today, we are where we are today.
I did not sell, but I know that currently some of the street hawkers here, they do the business for themselves. But back then, my siblings did it to support my mom, so they were under constant supervision when they went, and they would have to come and account to her. I wasn't there at that time, but Mom told me all this, and that is why I needed to share.
Wow.
At that time, school education was more of community based. To answer the question as to how we got to know everybody, almost all the people within South Centreso attended South Centreso, either SDA or LA or KCC. And so as we were growing, we knew ourselves. And almost all of us here also attended the 3 schools before we eventually went into secondary schools and training colleges.
Okay.
So unlike today where you have to transport your child from one environment to the other, at that time it was not like that.
Our story is a story which should inspire single mothers and single fathers. You don't have to have 2 parents to be able to make it in this world. Her father died when me, the eldest, I was either 14 or 15. And our mother had to take care of all of us. And today we are all sitting in front of you. We've all achieved something in this world.
I would like to ask you about how your thinking or your thoughts are about Mr. Eduhine, Mr. S.K. Opon, Edu Jemfi. All of them came into focus. Some of them were even politicians, MPs, and also, active in other political parties. How did they help in putting the family together as your real biological father was not there and your stepfather stepped in?
Good. Mr. Edu Jemfi was our stepfather, and he did very well. He was then working as a bank clerk.
Bank of London?
No, bank clerk.
Bank clerk, okay.
At Barclays Bank. It was then known as Barclays Bank. Now I don't know what.
Barclays Bank, DCO.
DCO.
Dominion
Colonial
and Overseas.
Okay.
That's where he was working. And our mother, even though she had 6 children, was a very pretty woman who used to go to the bank to sell her things. And Mr. Jemfi, I think, saw her and decided that this woman is have to get her.
Okay.
So she did. So he moved with us to South Centreso. And then he moved from Barclays Bank to go and teach at Pokua. Is it Pokua or something?
No, she went to UCC.
She went to University of Cape Coast.
She went
to
into
University
teaching.
of Cape Coast. From there, he went into teaching. He taught at Kumasi High School and Kumasi Anglican Secondary School.
Okay.
Mr. Jemfi was not a politician.
Okay.
He was apolitical.
Okay.
His main interest was in teaching mathematics and working lotto. I don't know whether he ever
never
won
won.
anything.
Never won, but the people he gave the figures to won. He wanted to win the 5
Okay.
and break the machine.
My machine.
Our father was technically apolitical, but then he moved in line with those days, the intelligentsia. He moved towards the Dankwa Buzia tradition.
I see.
And he was like the broker between CPP and UP. W.K. Duhine was for CPP, and S.K. Opong was for UP. Anytime the two of them got into some banters, our daddy would come in the middle and resolve the issues and sort them out.
Okay.
Indeed, when they were marrying, our daddy was in the middle of it all. So, and at the same time, they were the leading lights in the Sefi traditional area, because these are the educated Sefis.
Okay.
This time we are talking about 1950s, 60s. Sefi also had a long tennis court, and they had a club, and all these intelligentsia were members of the club.
Okay.
Take your mind back to those years, to have a club, a tennis club of all.
That's an enlightenment.
It's a very enlightened group.
Yeah.
So they grew up together. So when our daddy popped off in 1958, W.K. Duhine stepped in and decided to help our mother. So he took very good care of us. And during holidays, we'll go and stay with him in Accra here at Ringway Estate. S.K. Opong also came in when WK, the CPP, fell off, and UP. By the way, WK was the Deputy Minister for Defense at that time in the CPP regime,
Okay.
and later on became the Managing Director for State Diamond Corporation. S.K. Opong became the Deputy Minister for Education, and later I think Rural Development. Right. So when he was Minister of Education, that's when I had to go to St. Augustine. Before he became Minister of Education, he was the headmaster of St. Augustine College. So he made sure I got in there. And Adoma was going to Wesley Girls, also made sure he took care of our needs, as Kwamna has outlined. So those two political figures made us begin to appreciate the politics of Ghana.
Yes.
Because when W.K. Duhine was going on his campaign, he would go with Atu and myself in his car, and we'll go and campaign. Then S.K. Opong also, when he was going on his political campaign, we were there. So we got the feel of politics from the Sifi, leadership.
Okay.
Maybe that may have influenced us into coming into the national political stage.
Definitely so, and I'm not surprised at all. But if you look at the book, certain statements that are made, Uncle Kwame, I'm coming to you, Prof. Your narrative was very, very brutally frank. And that was a remarkable part of the book where, for instance, at later stages of your life, up to date now, we realized that even Uncle Atu had a little part with a diplomatic mission, whereupon he decided that no, I'm not going to engage you again because of how I've been treated.
I think the whole book is brutally frank.
Yes.
Because we really wanted to tell it what and all. If you look at the preface where we state the reasons for writing the book, we said that we wanted the youth of today to learn from our experience, and you cannot recount experiences without being truthful, and being truthful means being brutal, because yes, whether for good or bad, you have to tell it as it is. This is a collective biography,
Correct.
in fact, collective autobiography.
Yeah.
And you cannot write a biography without being frank, without being truthful. Then you are misleading your readers.
Mama Machum,
Yeah.
Where were your career tilting towards from the beginning?
From the beginning, I wanted to be a nurse.
A nurse, okay.
Yes. But when I completed middle school, I didn't go to secondary school because I had to go to secondary school the same time that he was going. And you know, our financial status was not right. So in those days, it is the man, so he had to go. So I had to go to the training college. So my mother told me, nursing, when you go on night duty and you are married, somebody can come and take your husband. So you have to be a teacher, and teach a teacher. You will have 3 months holidays where you can stay with your children and your husband. So she convinced me, and I went to the training college. I never regretted being a teacher. I loved it. I loved children, and I was happy with that profession. I went through that profession till I became an education officer, and then I resigned. Not it wasn't a compulsory retirement, but I retired voluntarily.
Mami Adoma Batel Kujo, what about you?
When my father died, I was just 4 years old. And 2 years out of the 4, she had shipped me to Sefi, our village, Sefi Aibensu, to go and stay with her sister, who was childless at that time. I think the idea was she was going to dash me to her. But God said, no, that is not the place for you. So he called our father early, and I was brought back to join my other siblings in Kumasi. So that is how my life started. Before then, I don't know how I survived.
Professionally, where were you heading?
Professionally, I initially wanted to be a doctor. So when I went to Wesley Girls, it was my brother Kwesi who was in Cape Coast at that time. So he introduced me to Wesley Girls when I was writing the common entrance. He said, oh, choose Wesley Girls. Because in Kumasi, how many people knew about Wesley Girls? It was Yasantua and St. Louis. So I chose Wesley Girls. I passed, I went, and I said I wanted to be a doctor. So the forms 1 to 5, I did both arts and science.
Okay.
But then I realized at a point that I don't like blood. You know. So I would rather shift back to arts. So I studied economics, geography, maths, and those things. So in the university, I did those maths and subjects, economics subjects. And that is where I met my husband. We were in the same year. When we finished, he went to the diplomatic service. So he was posted around.
Okay.
Our first posting was to Liberia, you know, where we stayed for 4 years during the time of Sergeant Doe.
Okay.
Yes, we stayed there for 4 years, came back to Ghana for 2 years or so, and went to Italy for some time. But I realized that my children's education was being affected more or less because anytime he moved out, I had to move with the children. We come back, we are now going to look for schools and it wasn't easy. So we decided that I would stay in Ghana with the children, and then he would move around.
Okay.
And then we would visit, and we realized that was even more interesting because our marriage it blossomed when we were visiting, and the children enjoyed it.
Mama, if we're Bram Labi, what story do you have to tell us as regards how the family was evolving when you were born?
When my mom married Mr. Edujenfi, I was still very young, so I thought he was my real father. But somewhere along the line, I had to leave South Central, follow my cousin, our cousin, Auntie Rose, to Accra. So one day, I I didn't even know that it happened on my birthday because I didn't know anything about birthdays. 24th February 1966, when I was washing, and I heard some drumming, dancing, jubilation. We were living at Tadabraka, opposite the same day dry cleaning.
Okay.
I was then in class 5 going to class 6. And it was exciting. So I also left the things I was washing and then I joined in. And we danced and danced and danced and danced and danced till I realized I was alone. Apparently, everybody was gone and I was lost. That was the Kwame Nkrumah's coup. To be honest, I liked teaching. I had always liked to be a teacher. So when I went to the training college, I was so happy. And after that, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Education, Winneba, after teaching for a while. And then back, I got married. And then after having my children, I decided to continue schooling. I went to, I did a distance course, and after that I went to Gimpa to do my master's when I was 50 years anyway. And then that is the story. I have 3 children, and then I set up a school, and as I speak now, I am in a private school set up for myself, and I'm still teaching in the school, much as I'm heading the school.
Okay.
So that is it.
Mine, you have to pick the book, purchase it, and then read it, and then you get all the information. But I'm the last of the Ahwoi, the last of the siblings, and my sister and I, Nana, we were like 2 peas in the pot. Although we were 5 years apart, I looked up to her, and I also looked up to Ahwoi a lot when she came to Kumasi. And we got along. From my side, I thought we all got along very well. My dad wasn't a very strict person, but when it came to punishment, he would have you stoop or do like hiding in the corner and those kind of things. And he was a little bit, my sister, older sister Nana, was a little bit favored over me. And I could sense it because I was a little bit too inquisitive, very talkative, everybody said. So that is how it was in South Centreso. And then we moved to Ahwoi Estate, and we moved there together with Ahwoi, and we stayed in Ahwoi Estate where
Ahwoi Bramlavi.
Exactly. And we had a pet dog that we enjoyed all. It was nice. We had a good time.
Before we leave the useful time, who would like to comment about Nana, who of blessed memory?
She stayed with me from the time that she left the secondary school. I had just come back from the UK, and I started teaching, lecturing at the Faculty of Law, the University of Ghana. So she used to spend the holidays with me, and then she moved in with me permanently when she became a student at the University of Ghana.
Okay.
She was a very, very pretty girl. She was also very brilliant. She was very hardworking, and from the university, she did a BSc accounting at the then School of Administration. She had a second upper degree. Did a national service at the Social Security Bank. They took her on full time, and she was doing well. All this time she was staying with me, but she had been sickly from her youth, and when she turned 28, she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the doctors said that she didn't have long to live. So instead of retaining her in the hospital, they discharged her. She came and stayed with Ato and his wife, and died in their house. And because of her nature, every one of us loved her. So her death was a very, very, very big blow. Unfortunately, she didn't marry, so she didn't leave any children behind. But her sister, the sister with the same paternity, she has made the children for her. 3 girls. She has 3 girls. So she lives through her and through her daughters. You know that she's still around.
Thanks, Prof. From the accounts in the book, I reckon that you all joined the PNDC in one way or the other, in different ways, but it was from the point when the 81 coup had occurred and President Rawlings was still organizing his government, looking around to look for, hands that will support him. Why was the focus narrowed to cocoa at that time? What was so key about cocoa at the time that you decided to go about the cocoa evacuation from the hinterland?
The Liman government had purchased all the cocoa that Ghana could produce at that time, but unfortunately they didn't have the wherewithal, the money to pay the farmers. And therefore, even though we had bought the cocoa from the farmers, they had not been paid. And therefore, we have not been able to evacuate the cocoa to the ports or the factories for either export or local processing. And everywhere you went in the country, cocoa was stuck in the villages, to the extent that a lot of it had even gotten rotten. And any farmer who came out of his house would see his cocoa sitting in his frontage unevacuated and unpaid for. Just about that time, Kwame and myself and a friend of ours called Kweku Ankuma, who became the first national organizer of the NDC, and before then was the Rural Development Secretary. In the PNDC, it was secretary. He became the secretary for rural development. We went on a pilgrimage to the Sefi area and saw this cocoa, debacle in front of us. So we got very upset, very, very upset, because we three and Ato were all members of the Liman government. We're CPPs. We were actually with the youth wing of the CPP. PMP, CPP 10 PMP.
Okay.
So for our government to create this problem for our farmers, we thought was something that could not be, endorsed. So we got very upset and decided that when we got to Accra from our trip to Sefi, we'll go and take Liman on, the president on, and let him resolve this problem. So we got to Accra, and Rawlings's announcement, 31st December, had come. And we had just come with this resolution that we're going to go to Liman and help him solve this problem. Liman had been overthrown. Rawlings was there and calling Ghanaians to come on board and help move this country forward. So the three of us sat and said, what do we do? And I said, well, what we saw in the rural area, Sefi area, should be the clarion call, should be the revolving point for the PNDC. It should be the word that we used, the flagship program.
Okay.
So they asked me to draft something, and I drafted a proposal, National Cocoa Evacuation Program, to mobilize the whole of the country's resources. Any way you look at resources, by definition, you had to mobilize it to go and evacuate the cocoa from the hinterland. So we sent this proposal to Jerry. He looked at it and seemed to like it. So he called Colonel Mason Wood and said, Colonel, these gentlemen have something, I think it's worth implementing it. So you set up a committee. We had proposed a committee to be set up, and I was to be the secretary or coordinator for that committee.
Okay.
So Colonel Mason Wood appointed myself as coordinator, he as the chairman, Fly Lieutenant Tiemo, Captain Menyedo, Captain Donko, and later Asari Obi came to join us. We set up our office at the State House, 6th floor, and that became the headquarters of the National Cocoa Evacuation Committee. And when we say mobilize the totality of Ghanaian capacity, we meant human labor, vehicular strength, financial, everything. So human labor, we got all the students to come on board. We got the university students especially to agree that we should close the universities down and that they will go out to the field and move the cocoa. Because
So
cocoa,
the students were to be deployed.
yeah, to be deployed into the field. Cocoa is the bedrock of this country. Then we got the professionals, the lawyers, the teachers, everybody to come on board this sinking ship of Ghana.
Was it successful at the end of it all?
Absolutely successfully. The one project that saw the whole Ghana mobilize to the defense of the motherland. Because Ghana was virtually sinking and we needed something to bring it up. I saw Ghana first in that move. I saw the whole of Ghana coming together to save Mother Ghana. And as far as I'm concerned, and they also agree, it has never happened, with the exception of Kwame Nkrumah's days. After that national cohesion, I haven't seen it happen again.
Reading the book, I realized that you hosted a talk show. I think you were a last-minute replacement for somebody. You performed well, and that caught the eyes of your political mentor in future.
It wasn't a talk show actually. It was an interview of the 1979 presidential candidates.
Okay.
There were 9 of them. The interview and the subsequent elections that saw President Liman emerge as the president of Ghana. Now, Professor Ivan Adai Mensah at the time was responsible for what we are doing now, doing the intellectual interviews on GTV. Now, just before the interview with the presidential candidates, he was appointed by Liman, at that time he wasn't president, Hillel Liman, as the general secretary of the PMP. In those days, party executives were not elected, they were appointed. So he was appointed. And because Liman was a candidate and therefore a participant in the interview, he thought that there was a conflict of interest. So he informed GTV that he couldn't do it, but that he was recommending me because he and I belonged to the Lagos Scrabble Club and we knew each other.
Okay.
So they came to me, put the proposition before me. I was a little hesitant because I was very, very young. I was 28 years at the time, and I had just returned from Oxford University for where I had done my master's degree. So I didn't want to do it. And then they said, oh, but Ivan Adai Mensah was confident that I could do it. So I said, okay, this is a challenge, I'll do it. So I did some research and I did the interviews. The interviews were conducted and played back just before June 4th happened. And they were so successful that I became a household word. So when June 4th happened, and GTV at that time it was called GBC, GBC TV. GBC TV again got an appointment with Jerry for an interview. He agreed to do it. This was 3 days after 4th June, on 7th June. He agreed to do it on condition that, and I'm quoting his words, that young law lecturer who grilled the presidential candidates is the only one I will allow to interview me.
Interesting.
So GBC brought an OB van to the barrack, to Gonda Barracks, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, was a law student, went with me because she did some of the research for me. And we interviewed Rollins. I think it went very, very well. And I didn't know that he had taken note of me. So on 27th June, when an implosion occurred within the police force, at that time it was police force, not police service, and the police rank and file, taking a cue from their military counterparts, also mutinied against their officers. And Jerry, who was then chairman of the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, wanted to appoint a committee of inquiry. He held a debate with the policemen. The policemen also said, we will only accept a committee of inquiry if that young lecturer who grilled the presidential candidate is a member. At first they said chairman. But when the people came to see me, I said, no, I'm too young to be chairman. So I appointed a member. So that's how my relationship with Jerry developed. You know, until 31st December, when he announced me as one of 10 persons that he wanted to report at Gonda Barracks because he had staged a coup d'etat. You know, and he announced this on GBC. Those who didn't have a relationship, I think, were afraid because they didn't know whether they had done anything wrong. So of the 10 people, I think I was the only one who reported. And when I went, he put me in his office and said I should start working. So that's how.
I see.
Got it.
Interesting. I'll come back to you, Prof. But I'm coming to Uncle Ato again. Uncle Ato, you were PNDC Secretary for Trade at some point, or even before preceding when you became the Secretary for Energy. So you were in thick of affairs when the PNDC took off.
I was in trade at the time that there was nothing in Ghana.
I see.
The GNTC was empty. There was nothing in the shops. And in those days, you had to get an import license to import everything. Extreme hunger and poverty in Ghana. And there was nothing. And everything was being distributed by government. So the Ministry of Trade was actually a Ministry of Distribution of Items.
The Ministry of Distribution of Items.
So if you wanted flour, you had to come to me at the Ministry of Trade. If you wanted rice, you had to come to me. Whatever you wanted, you had to see the minister. I did well. I distributed it nicely. In the process, I made a lot of friends and I made a lot of enemies. By and by, we went around it. Then the PNDC went to the World Bank. We started doing what was this now?
Economic recovery program.
Structural adjustment program. Started doing that. Then Chairman Rollins added to my portfolio structural adjustment program as secretariat, and I became the PND secretary for that one. Then he made me PND secretary for energy. It was then fuel and power. So at one point, I was holding 3 ministerial portfolios.
That's quite heavy.
Yeah.
Welcome to part 2 of our conversation with the Ahwoi and the Dujemfi families. In fact, we are talking to them in the lead up to the launch of their book, which is a collectively written by all the siblings of the Ahwois and the Dujemfis. Uncle Ato, we are back to you. You were talking about time that you were PNDC secretary, handling 3 portfolios. You are also mentioned in the book as one of those who were actively involved in getting Professor Mills on board into politics.
I was not even present at the meeting when Professor Mills' name came up. I was sitting somewhere in my house at Adenta when Kwamina came to my house at about 4:30 a.m. and told me that he has an assignment for me and that Rollins has settled on Professor Mills as his running mate. He has been to see Professor Mills and Professor Mills says he won't do it. And it was the last but one day for the announcement to be made. So he said, Kwamina told me that whilst he was talking to Professor Mills, the good old professor kept on mentioning my name. So he thinks that if I went and saw Professor Mills, he may agree. So he wants me to go and see Professor Mills and try as much as possible to convince him.
It means that you knew Professor Mills very well.
Yeah. So I decided to go and see Professor Mills, who was then staying at Legon. I was staying at the Denta. So I drove to his house, woke him up, and I started preaching, telling him that what God has ordained, you cannot reject it. And that you were slated to be Vice Chancellor. Last minute, they ditched you. God has opened a bigger door. And that bigger door is Rollins wants you to be his running mate. You cannot fail him. Otherwise, God will not listen to you again, ever. And he told me, preach them. And I told him, oh, my grandfather was the one who brought Salvation Army to Ghana.
Yeah, it's in the book.
So I know the Bible inside out. So we spoke for another about 1 hour. And he left me on the wall, went and spoke to the wife, came out again with the wife. And as they say, the rest is history. So after he had agreed to do it, I put him in my car. Those days there were no mobile phones. And drove to Kwame's office at the ministries, where I went and told Kwame that he has agreed. The eagle has landed. So I was there when he called Rollins. He had a chat with Rollins, and Rollins said, I heard Rollins say, don't let the man leave your sight.
That was very interesting.
At the time when Hamna recruited me to go and recruit Mills to be Rollins' running mate, I had quit politics. I'd gone into private business, but my contacts were still there. So they decided that they would use my contacts. That's how I was recruited to go and convince Mills to accept the running mate role. Then Mahama, when he came, in his first term, he shunted most of the Mills people into the background. So I didn't play any role there. But when he wanted to contest for the second term, he came and saw me, Kwame, and Kwesi in my house, and we agreed to help, and we formed a group known as Committee on Mahama Election 2. That's what COMET means. It was along the lines of GAME, which we also formed in my house. GAME was Get Atta Mills Elected. So we used the same machinery to help Mahama win the primaries. By that time, I had quit politics. Mills appointed me as chairman of the GMPC board. Mahama made me continue at the GMPC board for 1 year, 1.5 years. And he moved me to go, so I could go and set up the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, GIF. So those are the roles that I played. Those are the only 2 public roles that I played upon retirement.
Okay, but before we take leave of you, Uncle Ato, would you like to comment about how you viewed your mother?
My mother was a very strong-willed woman.
Okay.
Who wanted the best for her children. I think she wanted to prove to our Sefi external family that in spite of what they've done, taking everything away from her, including even the broom which is used to sweep the kitchen, she was not perturbed. She would make sure that her children get all the education that they could get.
How will you describe President Rollins?
Rollins was a great leader. A great leader in the sense that he's somebody who may not have the educational qualification that you have, but he was very perceptive. He will ask you your view on something, if you explain it to him and he accepted it, he will say, go ahead. The only caution was that as we are going ahead, you have to inform him, give him briefs on what is happening. But he was a very decisive leader.
Well, it's getting more interesting, and at this point, I'll be turning to the Honorable Kwesi Ahwoi. He, in his political life or public life, has held several portfolios.
First and foremost, I was a teacher. I taught at the Guiakwa State College for 1 year. Then I moved to the castle and worked with General Echampong, otherwise known as Mr. Echampong, Kutu Echampong, in the office called the Special Action Unit, which had Mr. Kwame Kakari as the head of the establishment. So in reality, I have worked with every government of this country from Kutu Echampong's time, with the exception of the Kufuor administration and the Akufo-Addo administration. I worked with Kutu Echampong in the castle with a special action unit. I worked with General Akufo in the castle with a special action unit. I worked with the Rawlings in the castle with a special action unit in 1979. I worked with Liman in the castle. At that time, we changed the name Special Action Unit to the National Development Commission. And the action unit was virtually the secretariat of the National Development Commission. Then I worked with Rawlings again in 1981 in the castle. And from there, all the area that you talked about, Ghana Export Promotion, Ghana Trade Fair Authority, Ghana Investment Promotion Center. I was the CEO for all these establishments until Professor Mills made me the Minister for Agriculture and President Mahama made me the Minister for Interior and the Ambassador to South Africa. So if you look at the span of time from 1971 up to John Mahama's time, I've worked with every government that has come at the highest level except the Kufuor and Akufo-Addo regimes.
Thank you. I'm now moving to Professor Ahwoi. Two quick, funny questions. Professor Kwabila Ahwoi, at what point did you decide that you want to take off the long beard that you used to wear?
Oh, that one is very easy. When we were entering, when I was appointed the coordinator for investigations, vetting, and public tribunals, it was a very, very powerful office in a revolution. Many people didn't know that I was very, very young at the time. I was 30 years at the time. And I had to be dealing with people in the highest positions in Ghana. Bank managers, even the governor of the Bank of Ghana, because those were the institutions where the corruption was taking place. So I decided to make myself a little fearsome. And I grew a beard which I was shaving once a year on 31st December. I'm very hairy. So the beard grew. Then at the time I was turning 40. We were starting the move to constitutional rule. This was 1991. I was born in 51, so 61, 71, 81, 91. Yes, 1991, we had started the move towards constitutional rule. I said to myself, well, this beard was good for revolution. I don't think it is good for constitution. So I decided to take off the beard. But I also decided that politicians, we must always have a recognition factor, and there must be a certain uniqueness about you. So I moved from the beard to the hat, and that's why I wear a hat. So that now, without the hat, I am naked.
I'm coming to the sisters, Amachum. But it's interesting that your brothers were so much in public glare or podcast spotlight. I'm learning about sisters of the Ahwois for the first time through this encounter. Maybe when I had the book first to, learn about the impending launching of the book before this particular session. Now, was it deliberate that the sisters wanted to stay behind the scenes, not to be heard at all? Because it was quite...
The sisters did not enter politics, but in their own way, wherever they were also making it.
Okay.
In our offices, in our establishments, we were making it. Because when you go to education, get to Obuasi, get to Kumasi, ask of Mrs. Chum, everybody will tell you. We had prizes. So we were doing and making it in our own way, not in politics. But we were.
Okay. Coming to the diplomat's wife, Amma Adoma Batel Kuju. How was your fortitude like when storms are raised or controversies are raised around your brothers?
We knew the Ahwoi family. We are the type that will never do anything that will go contrary to what we know is the right thing. So we knew that they would never, ever be corrupt or all the things people were talking about. So we were not shaken.
Coming to Ahwoi.
As a developmental queen mother, I see the work I'm doing as more political than even the politicians themselves. Because you need to know what your people want and be able to massage and find a way of getting along with them. And you need to be a leader where at the end of the day you are being looked up to by the people who are with you. And I think humility counts a lot when it comes to politics.
Zagi, what are the memoirs you have about your mom? And maybe your father too.
My mom, she's an amazing woman. She is. She's also collected that you would have to know her to understand her. She's very funny, very opinionated. She is. And she really wanted the best for all of us.
Okay.
And she didn't take sides at all. She put us all together as one unit and made sure that we all got what we needed in life. Even if you did not have it, she won't discourage you. She would keep telling you to keep pushing and pushing and achieve what your goal is.
I'm very grateful that the Ahwoi and the Dujefi family has granted us such a unique interview. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed these talks. Please try as much as possible to get hold of this book, The Children of House Number D13, South Central Kumasi, and you get insight into an aspect of our political life and the private lives of people who started like a mustard seed and grew to become very large in our politics or in our country. My name is Napoleon Atukito. Make a date with us again on GBC Networks. Thank you very much.